Hello and welcome back, Scott Wessex Blades. Right, moving on with the second part of this build along series. If you remember last time, I have now gone all the way around the outside of the blank, and the blade is shaped to the design of whatever that model is. Moving on, and the sides are done as well, and I've took those to only a 36 grit because they're going to get scratched up anyway. They're going to be in a jig, they're going to be up against the belt's going to be kicking, abrasives everywhere. I'm going to end up doing the sides again anyway, so I've just got it neat and tidy, and I've ground all the scale off if there was a pit in it. If you can imagine the steel as a plate on a rack, if they pick it up and drag it, that one corner will drag all the way across, and so sometimes I get sort of drag marks across the steel. So I wanted to go all the way down through and clean it off. Other makers, when they get their steel, it comes wrapped up as a strip for buying it flat ground stock, and it's literally just ground just before it was wrapped up for them. My stuff doesn't come like that because I think it gets laser, probably drops out and slams and clunks onto something. Then it will have some form of anti-scale on it, and then it will get heat treated in a fluidized sand bath. So this is like a sort of gas furnace, and it's blowing sand like an artificial liquid, so the sand has more contact to it than it would be in an air forge. The actual sand is up against it, there's more contact, it's a good soak. And then at some point I get a partial bainite done, which is a molten sodium. You can imagine I don't have that equipment, it's very expensive, and I really don't fancy messing around with molten sodium in a domestic setting. Okay, so I pay for that heat treat that I want that partial bainite, and what it does is it puts about 10% extra toughness without losing any of the hardness in what the temper's just done. Alright, so I'm paying for a bit of a black art, a bit of a secret magic sauce heat treat, little extra treatment at the end of the thing. There's a little bit of black magic going off in there as well, and there's all sorts of wonderful things to do with perlite and so we worked out what we're going to do, and we got a certain hold at a certain temperature and molten sodium. I'm not doing it in the garage. Right, so partial bainite, tough blade, and ball bearing steel. I choose it because it accepts a partial bainite very well, and most of my work has a micro bevel on the edge. You'll see later on I choose this steel because a mirror polished micro bevel, again, ball bearing steel, is very good for mirror finishes. So that's why I choose the steel and why I get them made the way I do. In the stages that I get sent off, I pay for it through the nose form. Alright, so this is the stage I'm at now, and what I'm going to be doing is marking the center of the blade on the edge that's going to get ground in a minute. So what I'm going to be using is something called Dicom Blue, something like that. It's a blue ink you put on metal and you scribe through. You can use a Sharpie pen, you don't need to use this. So move down here and I'll just show you the next stage. So I'm going back over. There's nothing wrong in using a Sharpie pen. It won't coat with heat quite so well as the engineer blue that I'm about to use, but it's cheap and you haven't got to invest in something that's as expensive as this. This next rack is quite handy for allowing things to dry, so I'm going to do the blue on there and just rack them up there and let them sit for 10 minutes just to dry off next to my heater. Obviously I want to get the dust off. As soon as I take the lid off, I don't want any dirt coming off of the lid into that. That will stain goodness knows what very well. All I do is I use the side of the brush because it flicks less than the end of the bristles, if that makes sense. If I use the end of the bristles, it can wick out the end and then run everywhere. By using the side of the brush for the small amount I'm about to do is more than enough ink stored in the little brush there. So like that. So to camera I'm doing a bit ham-fisted, but all you need to do is have it all set up there. You could have your little blades. I do 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can do 6 or 7 at a time. It's a lot easier. I'm just doing it so you can see what I'm doing. Not very efficient. So you can have the brush that way, and you can wipe your knife along like this. There we are. You can imagine you could have a batch very, very quickly and easily, but just for camera. That white there is getting a WD-40 off, just to give this the best chance. So really nice. All I'm doing there. I put that lid on. If you get that on, my goodness me, what a mess you can make of your workshop floor if you let that get anywhere. So let those dry. Back on with the next step. Bit of a scriber. That's in the middle of that blank. I'm moving this up and down. And down the middle. And this one. Yep. This one's thicker, so I've got to. Nice. This board I was doing it on is so this surface doesn't scratch the blade that you've just done the sides of. So this scratches the sides less. It's a piece of phenolic. You could use wood if you wanted. It's just very hard, very flat, and won't scratch the side of the knife you've just spent ages cleaning up. Just scribing an X on those, just to ensure I know what's what in terms of steel. X is Elmax, and that C there's for carbon, which would be 5200. Grinding jig, I use them, right? You'll also notice the orientation of these clamping bolts with the hex head. I'm putting them slightly at an angle, and a reason is when that goes there, I have a reference point that goes to that hole and that every time. So when I go to the other side, I'd have to go like that every time. Does that make sense? And then go up the other way. Be like that every time. It's a point of reference, so you're grinding the same, and that allows you to get in there. It's called the plunge, correct? So you're getting really attractive. You get that happening as the material's removed from both sides of the blade. It comes in two sweeps either side of the edge, nice and neat and tidy. But I also orientate those pins, one high, one low, and the reason is this: when you get the plunge on a Wessex blades, generally speaking, it will look like that. It doesn't look like that. It looks like that. So the transition from thick stock to blade bevel is not an abrupt point there. It has a transition from there to there. So there's more inherent strength in that area because it's sweeping in, because it's been ground at a right angle. So occasionally I do something and it's vertical, something like a go lock or something. Occasionally they go in a grind and jig like that, but most of the time I'm doing them this way and then that way. So my plunge transition there from full stock to ground bevel is varying. Okay, it's not an abrupt stop and start as if it was ground that way. Thick stock, bevel, right? Just me, that's the way I do it. So I should go that way first. I like to grind my left side first, my right side second, because I have slightly better control with my dominant hand. So I'm going to put it on that side first and grind this way. Anybody who's interested in getting a grinding jig, I can't say good enough things about these jigs from this company. This is Ant Hart's work at 7K Metalworx. Yeah, I've got 3 of them. So address link should be in the top right hand corner if you're interested in getting a grinding jig. Varying styles and sizes. Obviously my blades range from this side up to go locks, so I like a large one. Okay, so I've now ground the majority of the bevel on both sides of the blank using a coarse grit belt. I want to get that 95–90% right, and the reason I want to get it that close is I don't want to do too much work with a finer grit belt because it puts too much heat into the blade. What I need to get it looking is the same distance from the edge to the shoulder on both sides. Okay, and I also want to get the tip. Okay, so it looks like that. And there's 2 ways of looking at it. There's above vertical, so I'm looking at it like this on the blade edge. So there's the top of the spine like that. I'm looking at it like that. I'm looking to see that the tip is in the middle. And the other way to look at it is to see the depth of the blade from there to there from there to there, so it looks the same on both sides. Get it right at this stage. If you ended up and you can see that it was a little short on one side, you need to spend a little bit more time. So if that shoulder was here instead of here, you'd go onto the belt like that, and you would move it along the main bevel. But when you get to the tip, just spend a little bit more time just as you reach it, and then you go like that with it on the belt. It's a feel, and over the years, me now, I know I need to do this. It's something that you use not so much pressure. The first side, you can go at it. The second time, as you bring the grind to an edge, I don't press as hard, because you can't mess about with the heat in the blank, especially now we've got this heat treated and tempered. Okay, so the second side, after this, a lot of the time it's just dancing across the belt. I'm just scuffing across it just to get like a gossamer touch, just to get it right. And once I've got that right, using the next belt, I can feel it resting in the bevel on the belt as it's going along. I'm not actually trying to remove too much material. All I'm trying to do then is trying to get rid of these raky marks of the scuffing grit of the belt I've used to remove the steel. But if you think, oh, I'll get the tip back on the 60 grit, or I'll get the tip back on the 120, you'll be going like this and like that. Far better to get it pretty damn right. There's no point getting it 100%, because as soon as you put the next belt on anyway, you've got to remove just that little bit, and it'll go. It just will happen because you're removing some. Okay, but if you get it pretty damn right, the next grit, and you end up just bringing everything together neat and tidy. So that's one done, and the other point is in there. If you remember something about the plunge, you want that looking pretty damn close. So where you're catching the corner of the blade on a big thick belt like this, it's not very flexible, it's quite stiff. You can get the belt into that shape on another belt further on. So you haven't got to get that perfect, but you need to get it so it looks like that on both sides. Don't have it like this, because you'll be trying to fight and grind, and the belt will ride up the side, and there'll be all sorts of weird stuff going on, and you end up with the dreaded smile. We'll hear about that later. It's where you end up with loads removed here, loads removed there, and nothing in the middle, because you start off, the blade grinds in, and you take loads out there, then you move across, and you move across from starting to stopping, and not much actual actions happen in the middle. And when you go to the tip, you go like that at the end of it, and you end up with a big smiley. There's loads of stuff in the bin over the years. Everybody knows about smiley blades. So get it 95 to 99% right first, ish. Okay, with the big grit, because then once you're bringing it all together with the finer grits, you just sat in that groove. You just sat in that bevel, just removing the scratches and working up through the belts. Don't start playing trying to bring tips and plunge lines and the same grind on both sides each time. Just get that right, so that you're not actually fighting using a finer belt, if that makes sense. So I'm on a bit of a grind-a-thon. One thing I will say is, I'm not one for doing great grind sessions, great buffer sessions in terms of long time. I would recommend going on to Instagram if you think you're tough and invincible. Check out Eugene Toka Knives. Okay, this guy has got an aircraft hangar for a workshop, loads of equipment, and he can work really efficiently because he's got the space to lay everything out. So he can work in 30s or 40s, grind them, send them off a heat treat, get them back, gets a load of wood, chops it all up, sends it off for stabilization, and he gets in a groove. All right. So if he was grinding and he's freehand grinding, he has a big lever smock and a block of wood or leather on it, where it's resting on it as he's grinding, and he hogs out great mountains of steel efficiently without doing his body in, because he's worked out ways of doing stuff efficiently. If you can work to that, I would definitely recommend seeing Eugene on Tucker Knives on Instagram, and see anything that he says as a tip. Take it, alright, use it, because it's got some really good tips. Me personally, I'd rather do an hour grinding, an hour doing drilling. It's not so much like that. Maybe an hour of buffing. It's not quite so much like this. It's all different tasks during the day, so you don't end up with seized necks and shoulders. I'm just knocking on in ears, and I'd rather do varied tasks through the day. So what I'm doing now is, rather than take that out of the jig and the position of this will move, I'm taking that belt off, putting a 120, I'm using an 80 if you want. I go straight to a 120, and then I'm going to do the trizact, and then I'm going to do take it out and check it, because the next stage will be hand finishing. You could do all the deep grits on each blade, but seeing as I would rather have that not move, I find it easier to change a belt and undo those two bolts, flip it over to undo those two bolts up again. I just find this easier. Look at the rotation of the arrow inside the belt. Belt on, belt off. I haven't fiddled with that position. That where it was ground right now is where I'm grinding it again right now. All it's changed is the thickness of the belt. The locations of moving the platen backwards and forwards doesn't move as much as if I've moved it on the jig. I find I'd rather change the belt. Place today. Anyway, getting to a point on the belt's life where it's starting to stretch and it starts tracking left and right and won't stay in the same place, so I'm going to look around trying to change that. You know, it's not worth the faff. For handle material and stuff is great, but for doing plunges you can't have it suddenly decide I'm going to let go. If you've ever ridden a motorbike with a non-O-ring chain, you'll know what I'm like when all of a sudden it just goes, I've stretched, and you end up with a sloppy bit of drive, and it's just all sorts of weird things are going on. Same thing happens with these. It don't track right, it goes to one side, it starts curling more one side than another. You don't really want to be messing with it, so I'm at the limit of that belt, so I'm going to change it. So what I've got to the point of now is getting rid of the 36 scratches, and I'm keeping the tip as even as I can possibly go. The next belt in a minute will be the one that gets in there nice and tidy, which is the trizact. I'm going to take that off. Right. Okay, nothing much really to have filmed. Just going over this with a block of wood and some abrasive papers. So I've taken it up to a sort of rough 600 finish just prior to doing the etched logos, which I've had a big problem with over the last 6 weeks because the resist decal that I had was starting to fail. I was messing around with using vinyls and stuff, but JP Designs has sent me some samples, so a big huge thanks to them for giving me something to play with, and I can move forward with one thing or another. But that should be the next video. And I always like doing it on Elmax steel. It just seems to have very little need to finish off again with an abrasive paper. So thanks to JP, and see you on the next video. Also, any likes or comments are greatly appreciated for all the work that goes into making these videos, and hopefully see you on the next vid. 2 more videos here, in case you want to see something else.